Hi, everybody. Welcome to Goshen Prepping. Thanks for joining us. I want to address today the fact that governments fail. We've seen it all over the world, even in recent times, economic collapses, etc., things that come into play. And here in America, there are so many things we take for granted. In fact, I think most people take it lightly because they're like, all these things we see around us, they're always going to be there, and we'll always be able to relax and depend on the government for things. Well, that's the first thing you should understand. You should never think in your mind that you need to depend on the government for anything. If anything, the government depends on us to keep it afloat. That's a whole different video, by the way. But when it comes to preparedness, there are 6 things specifically we need to address that will disappear, and we have to be ready for this, because I find a lot of people aren't. And if you're not ready for this, you'll get caught off guard, and it literally could be fatal for you, for the fact that these things are literally life dependent. All right, number 1, we want to understand that the government provides water and food for us. Even if it's just water services, that's one thing. But you might say the government doesn't provide food. Well, sure they do. They provide interstate commerce. They set up the financial system. There's all kinds of things as far as this very extensive dynamic that makes it the government, so food supplies keep coming to us. And the grocery stores, which obviously are not government owned in our country, at least right now anyway, they're not, are set up and basically in a just-in-time method in which the food barely gets there just in time for you to take it back off the shelves. And any type of small ripples in the supply chain will be catastrophic. And if we're talking about crap hitting the fan, economic failure, we're talking about grocery stores failing. That's a sobering thought. And of course, that's why we talk about stockpiling all the time. Now, because of this, all these things happening, the government will start enacting the National Guard to be able to take care of things, and the National Guard will have the purpose of handing out food. But you have to understand, right now we have 330-ish million people in the United States. That's a lot of mouths to feed, and it's going to take some time. So at the very least, you want to make sure you have some food and water set aside. I mean, if we're talking about serious preppers, they have it set aside for years. But even if you just have it for like a few weeks, that's better than nothing. Have some food and water set aside, because the government, there will be a lull in time, a lag in time between everything collapsing and finally some food being delivered to you. But that's even if you think food will be delivered to you. That may not, because government services, when we're talking about a true crap hits the fan, that's going to disappear as well. So you need to take care of yourself as far as food and water. That should be your first thing. Number 2, the government also provides protection in numerous ways, obviously. We're talking about military protection for our country. Government goes down, we could have an invasion. But even more locally, obviously, the government provides police. Your state government, your local government provides police departments, which are there to they're there to protect and serve, which is not always the case. But think about this. If we see an economic collapse, people are not going to have the money anymore. And if people don't have money, they're not paying taxes. If there's no taxes, there's no income or pay for the police officers. And I know some will still stay on the job, but many will not. They have to provide for their families too. And not having these police officers on the force, we're going to see a serious problem with crime being out of control. But guess what? Because the way the economy is going to be collapsing anyway, the crime's already going to be out of control, but now we're going to have far less officers to be able to handle this. This is not theoretical. This is already happening in places around the country in which police departments have had serious declines in the amount of people working there, mostly because taxes, the cities are not keeping up with the taxes. As on the same note, crime goes up, but since the police officers are going down, the crime goes up. It makes it even worse because nobody's there to stop them. You need to find a way to protect you and your family, because understand, we're not simply talking about just crime and statistics. We're talking about sheer desperation. People are going to be desperate for food, and desperate people for food become violent. So you need to find ways to protect yourself, obviously with weapons, which we can't really mention too much on YouTube, keeping physically fit, etc. That's some actions you need to take. Number 3, the government also provides for us, I use this term lightly, reliable services. All kinds of stuff, by the way, obviously. We have trash, we have phone, even though, again, phone is more private, but it still works as far as government regulation goes. Sanitation, your garbage man is going to be picking up stuff, but also in a lot of cities, they have like sewage, etc., water and treatment facilities. And of course, let's not even talk about, or forget, I should say, electricity. We definitely have to have electricity coming through. All of these could just completely flat out disappear. Very well could. Now, I mean, more than likely, we're going to see interruptions. In fact, we've already been warned, even without this collapse that we're talking about, that this winter we're going to be seeing interruptions anyway. So if that's the case this winter, what's it going to be like if we see a full collapse? Pretty much kiss these services goodbye. So you need to be able to provide for yourself in all these things. I think as preppers, we always talk about stockpiling food. But what do you do with the extra cans? What do you do with the smells of your food cooking? And people hear that or smell that away. Hear it. People smell it far away. Or what happens if you need to be able to have some sewage? Of course you do. Those are all things you need to take into account. But when you get back to electricity, when we look at third world countries, or if we look at, pre-electricity mankind, yeah, we were able to survive, but the death rate was higher. People died faster, and the survivability was a completely different dynamic than it is now because of electricity. And I'm not talking about having lights and Netflix in your cell phone. I'm talking about, simply put, refrigeration or your freezer. Having refrigeration has shown if we put that into third world countries, their life expectancy goes up just because of refrigeration. And so I don't say have electricity just for comforts, even though I do like having a fan now and then. It's nice having lights to be able to work on some things. I'm talking about for a freezer. If you can get a chest freezer and electricity, solar generators can keep it going. I've actually shown that in the video before. As long as you have a decent solar generator with a solar panel, like a Blue Yeti's the one I love, then it'll keep your freezer going, because the freezer doesn't need continuous power, but it does need a little power here, then a little bit later, a little bit more power here, and you can continuously charge your unit to keep it going. At the very least, you're looking at that. But understand that the stuff you have now to have electricity coming in your house as such will disappear. We're already seeing problems as it is. Number 4, obviously, we're going to have a serious diminishment or decline in adequate health care. We've already seen, in fact, right now we're experiencing a serious shortage in prescription medications. Do you know that? All kinds of prescription meds are on a major decline, lots of shortages. If you don't believe me, go to any pharmacist, go to a local pharmacist and talk to them about it, and they'll tell you about, oh yeah, we're out of this and this and this, and we can't seem to get these drugs back in stock again. But what's it going to be like if crap hits the fan? Back in my military days, I've been to a lot of third world countries, and the only drug, I'm going to use air quotes in this, the only drug they had in their emergency department was oxygen. That's it. There was no other life-saving devices at all. It was simply just to hopefully perfuse the blood tissue with oxygen to keep them somewhat alive. That's very, very well what could be heading in the United States. Now, our healthcare, how about this? Our healthcare technology in the United States is fantastic. The technology is incredible. The healthcare system, let's not go there. But what's it going to be like when crap hits the fan? We're talking about a major diminishment in healthcare and making it so a lot of things you depend on for life-saving will be gone, and that alone is going to cause a decrease in the population. I always recommend taking an EMT course. They're relatively inexpensive. And when it talks about traumatic first aid, this is the good stuff. This is the stuff that you really could use. So find one in your community. A lot of times, if you have like a local fire department, they'll put on an EMT course. Colleges too, even though they can be a little bit more expensive. Stock up any type of medical supplies you can find. I'm a big yard sailor. Whenever I see anything medical at a yard sale, I'll pick it up and add it to my giant buckets. It's always good to have those things. And I always talk about having Dr. Alton's and Nurse Amy's book. I'll link it below. This really amazing spiral-bound book he developed, well, both of them developed, I should say. It really sets forth all the different things as far as like treatment goes for people in case crap hits the fan. Because when crap hits the fan, there very well may not be any hospitals or doctors or dentists nearby to be able to handle whatever problem may come your way. Something else the government does right now is ensures economic stability. And I know that's almost kind of like, you're probably saying, no, it doesn't, because things are terrible right now, economically speaking. But we are not a Venezuela right now. We are not a pre-Nazi Germany right now, but we're heading in that direction and very well may be there very soon. And if that happens, we're looking at a collapse of markets. What markets? All the markets. Stock market, real estate market, banks will fail, hyperinflation, devaluation of the dollar, making it so all these things we depend on financially will start disappearing. And I don't care if you have money in an account that's covered by the FDIC. If the banks fail, the federal insurance, they have to have money coming from somewhere too. And if we look at hyperinflation, it's really not going to cover a whole lot. And not to mention, it takes time too, by the way. Our currency is a fiat currency. Good old Nixon took us off the gold standard. And there's been problems with that even before Nixon, for the fact that our money is simply just it's more like a cloth than a paper, but this piece of paper simply just says, oh, it's worth $1. But why is it worth $1? Because the government says it's worth $1. I love gold and silver. And I always talk about, for crap hitting the fan, you really want to diversify. Have all kinds of tangible things you can barter with people. Obviously, you don't want to get rid of your canned food, but having canned food is a good thing to barter with. If you have things like ammo, if you have anything that are vices from liquor to cigarettes, anything that somebody might want, even if it's something you have zero interest in, becomes a tradable asset. Now, speaking of assets and diversification, I always talk about like silver and gold. And one of the things I am sponsored by is Alpine Gold and GoldBacks. Both those companies, fantastic. I use Alpine Gold to buy my GoldBacks, but GoldBacks I think is probably one of the best solutions you can have. Because here's the thing, if you have a gold necklace, and we've seen this in the countries like Venezuela, for example, you can actually clip off pieces of the beads from the gold necklace and sell them to someone. And not everybody knows if that's actually gold or not. Not to mention, we don't know what kind of carat it is. We don't know how heavy it is. And there's lots of fraud, even in gold right now in the United States, where something, even like a gold bar, is stamped as gold. It may not be gold. We see fraudulent things take place all the time. So I always recommend GoldBacks. So let me take just a minute to show you this. This is my GoldBacks wallet. But in here, it keeps all of my GoldBack bills nice and intact. And I'm going to show you basically what they look like. I'll take just a minute for this. But here is a 1 for the GoldBacks. And right now on the exchange rate, this one costs about $4. This is 1/1000th of a troy ounce of gold. It is literally gold on here. And practically speaking, it is almost, I don't say almost, I don't see even if there's a possibility, it cannot be replicated. The process to put the gold on this, the whole process cost millions of dollars to make this happen. So making a counterfeit one of these, good luck with that. And there's actually been independent companies who have verified, said, yeah, this really is 1/1000th of a gold. So this is going for, I think on the exchange rate about $4 right now. So here's a bunch of those. Here's a 5. So 5 times 4, this is worth a little over $20. Oh, look at this. Of course, I got some really big ones here too. I'll just jump right to the biggest one. This is just awesome. Here's a 50. Honestly, something about just having it, it's actually, you can tell there's metal in here. There's actually gold in here, and it's heavy. This is 1/20th of a troy ounce of gold. So 50, this is worth about $200 right here. So I'll put a link below for GoldBacks if you want to pick some of these up. I highly, highly recommend it. But I talk about diversification, highly pick up a lot of different things to be able to have something that's not just a fiat currency, but it's actually worth its weight in gold. There you go. All right. Then lastly, and this is probably the most important that I find that most people on this channel really want to look at, is right now our government setup is to preserve our constitutional republic. Preserve the Constitution as it's set forth. And understand that when crap hits the fan, desperate times come through, your personal privacy at the very least is going to disappear. And it's all in the name of public safety. This is literally the mindset. You know what? We know you as a person, you want your personal privacy, you want to do your stuff, but you know what? It's for the greater good. It's for the community. And it's in their mindset of what they think is good for the community, by the way, even though you may know better. And ultimately, over time, as you see more and more of this happening, we've seen numerous times in our history where the government has enacted martial law. It is not out of the question. It's been done numerous times. But again, same thing in people's mindset today. They're like, oh, it'll never happen. It has happened numerous times. So don't tell me it hasn't. If it's never happened before in over the 200-year history of America, you'd be like, yeah, that would be a big thing if they did it for the first time ever, but they've done it so many times. It's not that big of a deal for the government to enact or put in martial law. Not to mention suspension of habeas corpus. Right now we have a right to a speedy trial. We have a right to, if you are detained or arrested, to be seen in front of a judge. But there's been times where the government has also suspended habeas corpus, and we're not talking about the most craziest off-the-wall presidents, although some of these are that way too. But like Abraham Lincoln did this. George W. did this. George W. You know what I'm saying? This is modern times. This is not going back a long ways. And I'll tell you, obviously this one is the one we need to prepare for, because this very well could be a possibility, because I find there's a lot of people in the government right now who don't want the government. They want a new type of world government where America does not stand alone as a sovereign nation. So lots of things that very well could happen, and I'm going to be as bold to say probably will happen within our lifetimes, probably the next few years. And we need to be ready for this, because again, all these things we look around, all these luxuries we have, all these things we take for granted very well could disappear. They're already disappearing right now as we speak. So we have to be prepared for this, because understand the America we used to know is not the America we live in today. And the whole republic is not falling by basically shouts of people saying, don't let it fall. We're having new generations coming up who want it to fall. They've fallen for the rhetoric and are now basically the soldiers in the army of trying to bring down our United States. So we need to be prepared for this. At the very least, have supplies, etc. And of course, that's what Goshen Prepping is devoted to, is putting out all this information. So we need to be prepared for this, obviously. And that's what Goshen Prepping is all about, is getting you prepared for all these things that are coming. Because now more than ever, we're seeing these taking place right before our eyes, and we have to be ready. Thanks for watching.